Well, that's
my
why it
goodness.
makes a difference to come
Yeah.
and see. It's not even there's not like so much to see, but it's to hear and to hear it from the people who do this work and the amount of passion that they have and enthusiasm for what they do. Like it's infectious. It really is.
Oh, yeah.
That's why meeting with, and you didn't get to speak to Hanan or, in DNA lab, but she will talk about what she does with probiotics like it's her babies, like it's incredible.
Especially when thinking about probiotics, prebiotics, functionalities.
Biotics. Yeah.
And there's such conversation when it comes to formula, product development, bringing better for you products into the market. It's like, how can companies level up? How can companies bring even more advantage to consumers? That's true. And that's proven. So yeah, it's been incredible. So
thank you, Deleo,
Deleo,
for sitting with us today. Listeners, we are here at the Purity IQ head office in Guelph. And Christine and I and Jerry and Phil from This Commerce Life, we just finished our tour of the facility. We saw two sort of distinct areas of Purity IQ, one with their DNA testing lab with regards to probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics. And then the other side is the NMR. So maybe we'll just kick it off with our questions. Do you want to do that? Or
yes, indeed. Let's kick it off.
Yeah.
So would love to know why and what brought you to this place. We'd love to understand your story and journey.
The journey, very unexpected. My background was all in retail, food and drug retail for over 30 years, not a scientific bone in my body. And I have 3 partners. None of them are scientists either. So here we are, 4 co-founders. We've created a company that is rooted in science. We have 5 PhDs on staff. We have a lab that you toured, that you saw. If you would have told me that when I was back in corporate world, I would have thought you'd lost your minds, honestly. It is the furthest thing from anything I ever expected to do. I had no scientific capabilities whatsoever. I think I even said to Jerry that I didn't even have a chemistry set as a child, like there was no interest whatsoever. And so here I am, probably knowing much more than I should. But the reason to start Purity IQ was really to try and help combat adulteration. That was really the genesis of the company. My background in food and drug retail, 2 of my partners have consumer packaged goods experience. They were former executives, one with Unilever for almost 30 years, one started at Nestle and went on to run companies in the US and Canada. We all came at this from the knowledge that brand needs to be protected. Brand integrity is so important. And among many of the things I did in my career, I was the VP of private label at a supermarket chain here in Canada. And as a retailer, your private label is your brand. It's your name on the packaging. And if something happens with that product, it's your reputation. If something happens with a product you carry from a manufacturer, it's their problem. Yes, you carry the product, but the recall is assumed by the manufacturer. But when it's your brand, it's hard to regain that trust if you lose that trust with the consumer.
Yeah.
So when we came together to start Purity IQ, we really wanted to understand what area did we want to delve into. And it was this area of food fraud. And it's something that as consumers we're aware of and getting more and more aware of. Maybe not the terminology food fraud. I'm surprised that not everybody understands that. But the fact that it's intentional adulteration, because there's unintentional, there's cross-contamination that can happen, but the intentional one that someone is out there trying to make a buck, it's economically motivated. There's no reason. I'm not talking about food terrorism, that they're trying to kill people, God forbid, but this is diluting, substituting, just trying to put in cheaper ingredients, but get the price, right? That we're all paying as consumers. And on the supplement side, what makes it worse is we're expecting a health benefit. So not only are you wasting your money, but you're getting zero health benefit potential. So we came together and we took a look. So we are in Guelph.
Yeah.
The university is our landlord and we're in Research Park. So this was a great area to be in. And our staff are in Guelph. So it's fantastic for them. They're able to come to the office easily and go for lunch if they want to or whatever. So we chose this place because of, again, its proximity to the university and the great food technology programs that they have. And some of our staff are from the university. We recruited them from the university. So really the big thing that we're trying to get out is the fact that most people And I'm not going to talk about consumers now. I'm going to talk about our clients. So whether there's the ingredient supplier all the way to the brand owner, the retailer, whoever, we deal with absolutely everybody along the supply chain. It's getting them to understand that the testing they're doing today isn't necessarily going to help them when it comes to finding adulteration. And that's the message we're trying to get out to everyone. We don't do any other testing here. We don't do the routine testing that every company has to do. So there's regulatory requirement to do safety and compliance testing to make sure that the products are safe for consumption. We don't do those tests. We didn't want to start a lab. There's hundreds of labs, thousands of labs, out there. We weren't going to just copy what they were doing. So we don't do any of the heavy metal pesticide, pathogen testing, micro, none. So you were asking about, do we do pH testing? That's not our realm. We really wanted to focus on authenticity. And so that's all we do. And for us, we have defined authenticity, it's our definition, as identity and purity and consistency. The three of those plus equals authenticity. And so most of the companies are all doing identity testing today. Not most, they all have to. That's the regulatory requirement. You have to do an ID test. And what we want our clients and potential clients to understand is that the ID test will not help you when it comes to adulteration. It may not, depending on the technology being used, the analytical method being used, because an ID test will tell you if the ingredient you're expecting to find in the product is there. It won't necessarily tell you if anything else is in there. And it's that anything else that is in there that can be the problem.
That's what I find so fascinating, right? Because you're not looking out for it if you're in the corporate and in the business as a quality assurance person. It's really not what you're trained to do.
And you mentioned, when we're going through the tour, really it's like targeted versus non-targeted. Yeah. That was so interesting. If you're able to cover those realms for us, because I think that part is like, oh wow, you're looking for that first element. But yeah, I'll leave it to you to expand on that.
Except again, as a layperson, when we were talking with our science staff, and they were talking about this like it was common knowledge, because they're English words, they're not scientific words, targeted and non-targeted. So we all assume that we know what that means, but the implication, and I take the time to explain it because that's when I see the aha moment to people, again, lay people. But when you're talking to even QA people, they may not have the knowledge, the science knowledge of the difference. So again, targeted, and we were saying DNA testing, for example, is a targeted technology. It targets something specific, hence the term. You're asking it to find something specific. So is there turmeric in this supplement? So that's great. And that's what an ID test typically does. Non-targeted will expose everything in the product. So again, when you've got a company based on looking for adulteration, targeted technology wouldn't have made sense for us. So again, we didn't know what we didn't know. When we put this company together, we had science advisors, we talked to people at the university, and they said, if you're going to be about this, you should invest in NMR. And again, naive, we had no idea that it isn't on every street corner. It's not ubiquitous. We believe, and we're not 100% sure, but we think that we're the only commercial lab with NMR technology in North America.
Not one, two.
Two of them, exactly. But that, we had no idea. And there's a reason why. Yes, it's expensive. It's expensive equipment. You heard today that it needs cryogenics. You have to be feeding it liquid nitrogen and liquid helium. And that's not inexpensive either. You need trained NMR spectroscopists. It's not like you can just take your existing lab staff and send them out for a night class or whatever. And it's not just running the machines, it's interpreting the data. So for a whole bunch of reasons, it's not readily available. So it's like we have brought NMR to the masses. It's like we've made it accessible and we've made it available. And so again, we didn't know what we didn't know. And so we invested in NMR, which is targeted and non-targeted technology. So we like to say you can't hide from NMR because it does show you everything at a molecular level. And again, if you're going to be looking for adulteration, a targeted method is completely inefficient because it's a needle in a haystack. Right? Is X there? No. Is Y there? No. Is Z there? Like you'd be going back and forth forever. Whereas you saw the spectral data, if there's an anomaly, if there's something in there that shouldn't be there, it'll show up on the data. And that's why NMR was counseled, something we should invest in.
What I found fascinating during the tour is you've had these years establishing a compendium or a library of standardized samples that you can put against. Say you get a sample, here's the thumbprint that we know should be in there, and then you compare it against the peaks of that sample, and you know right away whether or not it is authentic or pure.
And that's the other reason why, not everybody has NMR, because you could afford to, buy the equipment, you could hire an NMR spectroscopist, but you need a database.
Yeah.
It's not one of those, put a sample in and this is or
And I just think about the time, like how long did it actually take to
well, every sample we run adds to the library.
Right.
For sure.
It's ongoing. It's a a nonstop process. You're always building that library.
I think about supply chain being a massive contributor, the challenges of perhaps getting certain ingredients, and then COVID, for example. Did you see a rise of interest with companies wanting to really test their ingredients and test perhaps a combination of ingredients in their finished products?
Yeah, and what's interesting, the supply chain woes didn't end with with COVID disappearing. So supply chain issues have existed forever. They were exacerbated during COVID, and we as consumers became aware of them because we couldn't get things, even computer chips and whatever. There were so many problems. And so yes, we saw a lot of people having to scramble to find new sources of supply. But and this is just anecdotal. I don't have any, whatever resource numbers to give you, but apparently there was more. So, elderberry was sought after because it has, immune properties. But apparently there was more elderberry sold during COVID than there was raw material available in the world. Even with COVID gone, it's making people understand that supply chain, there are always going to be issues. There are things that are with us forever. The minute there's a scarcity of raw material is when the adulterers swoop in. It's an opportunistic crime. It's a crime. Well, let's not, sugarcoat this. And if there will always be war, call me pessimistic, but I think it's realistic. There will always be issues where there's some sort of geopolitical instability or climate change, whether you believe it exists or not. I mean, there's droughts or there's, flooding, there's whatever that's, affecting crops. So it gets very difficult for suppliers to be able to count on, a consistent supply of product. The whole Ukraine-Russia stuff is going on, and we heard about sunflower oil. I mean, it's the biggest exporter of sunflower is Ukraine. So the minute you've got something like that going on, and that will always be with us, unfortunately. So there's that. We talked about it today too, all the intermediaries now, this whole global economy. There's so many borders that, our products have to cross. So many hands touching it, which gives you an opportunity at all of those intersection points for someone to do something, to blend, to mislabel. So it's very difficult for the end manufacturer, unless you're 100% vertically integrated and you went and, picked the crop yourself all the way to produce the product. You don't have visibility on the supply chain. It's opaque now. It's gotten very difficult to trace properly. So everybody along the way should be testing because you just don't know the handover from one to the next,
And you know what? At the end of the day, we are dealing with raw materials to begin with. So these crops will always be affected by weather. And there's always going to be a supply chain issue. And so there's always that opportunity, like you said, with the fraudsters to cut it with maltodextrin, to, I don't know, what other materials that would be, because it's always going to happen. My mind always goes back to that Upton Sinclair book. And, food fraud probably goes way back before that.
First documented cases were in ancient Greece and ancient Rome.
Oh, really? Documented. So could you imagine how early?
Yeah, the caveman. Right? No, I mean, back then it was happening, and those are the first documented cases. Again, it was the oil and whatever was being already, it was being diluted, and so it's been around forever. It's going to be around when we're long gone. But what we're trying to do is make it harder, and we're trying to educate our clients and our potential clients. You think you're doing everything right. You're checking off all the boxes because people, for the most part, they want to do the right things. And they don't realize that there are limitations to some of the technologies being used, but the fraudsters know those. It doesn't take long for them to figure out where the gaps are, right? And the shortcomings. So they know It's targeted. Great. I'll do something else.
Interesting. And when we're going on the tour, there's also discussion about that ability to even detect the origin, for example, the country and perhaps the terroir that contributes to certain elements within a food product, which is interesting. And I didn't realize even to that level, that degree, that
That's
product
NMR.
can be detected.
NMR is used, we don't yet, but NMR is used in the wine industry.
Ah, okay.
And so not only will it tell you the region, it'll tell you the vineyard.
Okay.
Whoa,
So
that's
taking
just
the example then, the
Yeah.
examples that would then be in the,
To have those samples, those authentic samples in your library,
Right.
and you match against
Okay.
those. But yeah, it's that specific.
Yeah.
And it's not just country of origin, it's also biological origin. And I think that that's
Right.
important too, because there are, high bush blueberries versus low bush blueberries.
Yeah.
People who are looking for one or the other. And so there'll be fraud where they'll tell you it's the one and it's the other, but you can't visually, you can't know that. And often types of analytical methods won't be able to see that either. So one of the things I think that you'll find interesting is that there's some analytical methods look for chemical markers. And again, the chemical marker, if we take a botanical again, because again, supplements, it's a dog's breakfast, unfortunately. But the active ingredient will be in one part of the product. It might be the root, like if it's ginseng, it's in the root. But the chemical marker is the same within the whole plant. So knowing that, the fraudsters will put in other parts of the plant that will still say ginseng, but it'll be a stem or a leaf or the flower or the whatever, and yet it passes a DNA test. It would pass too because it's the same DNA. So these are the subtleties,
right.
where you think, okay, I've done my ID test. I'm done. I've got a C of A. Next. And it's not realizing. So it's, again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak here, and I'm available because we have a message to deliver. You don't know what you don't know. And so we're trying to get that word out that you're not doing enough. If you really care about your product and you care about your brand, you need to make sure that you're doing all the right type of testing.
Yeah, because, as a quality assurance person involved, you're really asking for a certificate of analysis, a COA, a supplier's audit documents. You're asking for micro, you're asking for chemical. And those are like the standard things you ask as part of a quality control program or a part of a GFSI audit. But because you're so used to it, that's industry standard. You're not trained to think beyond that. So I think for me, it's super enlightening because I cut my teeth in quality. And now I'm like, whoa, there's so many other things that we should be teaching our food science students at university, that here's another technology that you need to be aware of.
Yeah, how to investigate.
What I'd love for you to maybe switch gears on is the probiotic side.
Oh my gosh.
Because I think for me, that's super fascinating as well.
Yeah, the probiotics, so interesting. That's where we use qPCR. So it's DNA testing.
Yeah.
And probiotics, less about adulteration. So it's less about substitution. It's more about making sure that what you're looking at is authentic, so that you're looking at the strain. So as we were explaining on the tour earlier, when you look at a probiotic and you have a name like Lactobacillus acidophilus, and then there'll be a number, and I'm making this up, GG something or other. There's the genus, then there's the species, and then there's the strain. So the numbers and letters like GG 1, 2, 3 or whatever, that's the strain. And that is where the health benefit is in the strain level. So at the species, if it's acidophilus could have dozens of different strains, all of them with different purported health benefits. If your testing stops at the species level, and yet you're declaring that you have a strain, if no one's tested to make sure that strain is there, you may not be getting the health benefit that you're expecting. And you're taking that probiotic for a reason, whether it's, for gut health or some people for MS symptoms or whatever. But if you're not taking the correct strain, so it's imperative that the testing go to the strain level. And especially when many probiotics now have multiple strains in them, they're blends of, up to a dozen or more strains. How much of each of those strains is in there? So it's not just the identity now, it's the enumeration. It's actually, when they say 50 billion CFU, well, how many of those are they really 50 billion?
Exactly.
Are they alive? Are they viable? Because if they're dead, they're not doing you any good. And then if there's multiple strains, are they really in the quantity that you're expecting? So again, when we started this business and it was explained to me what the gold standard is in probiotics for the enumeration, for the cell count, is a 125-year-old method. It's been around forever. And it is still considered the gold standard, even though there's up to 35% variability in the results, which is
massive,
mind-blowing. And so it was explained to me that, they grow the microorganism on agar and they count, they sit there and they count. And so the way you count, the way I count, the way anybody else counts could be very, very different, hence a lot of the variability. So what we have with viability PCR is we're actually able to, and it's plus or minus 5% variability versus 35%, by the way. We're able to see if the count, first of all, if the cells are viable, if they're alive, and we can really see the number. So it's not in CFU.
Yeah, that's so interesting because often we look at CFUs, we hear about the strains, and they're one of the reasons to purchase, right? And during the tour, what I found so interesting is that it's also supporting businesses, for example, if they're making probiotics and perhaps they're almost overshooting in terms of the counts of specific strains so that life is maintained throughout the full shelf life, or they're competing or non-competing in certain ways. So it actually can help companies if they're within the threshold that they're claiming on pack, if they don't need as much and they're still able to maintain that throughout shelf life, there's that pathway in as well.
What we really are excited about, that's why the team loves what they do, because it's deep dives. We have a very narrow focus. Again, because we don't have a menu of hundreds of different tests that we do, it really is all around authenticity, identity, purity, consistency. We can do a lot more in those areas and help our clients to really do investigations or deeper dives or projects, custom projects, to really figure out, what you just described, for example, about, the quantity at end of shelf, whether or not they're pumping in too much at the beginning to ensure that there's the right number at the end and that they don't have to. And so there's cost savings there, or maybe you need to be putting more of this one and not that strain, et cetera, et cetera. Or even pre-post manufacturing, how it may be affecting the product, if there's variability. So there are so many avenues that we can do deeper dives, and the team loves that, right? Because then it's not rote. It's not just, I can do this with my eyes closed. They really enjoy those projects. One of the things that we're doing that we just introduced this year, and I think as a former QA person, you'll find this interesting. Our approach has been with QA, right? I mean, anybody that we talk to, whether it's a manufacturer or supplier or retailer, we talk to the quality assurance people first. In some cases, there's food fraud departments. That's rare, but we have a retailer that has a food fraud actual department.
Oh, that's great.
Which is fantastic. And they're ahead of the times. But one of the issues we found is that by the time you get to that stage and you're talking to QA, there's a concern about finding things, because now it's that, Friday 4:00 recall, right? It's a crisis management mode, right? And I've had two people, senior people, QA people in two different companies, say to me, paraphrase that, I think we'd rather not know. And I remember thinking, wow, that's huge. If the CEO of your company heard that, like, you'd be out the door, because again, that's very narrow-minded to think I'd rather wait for something to happen than to know, because yes, it means rework. It means maybe recall. It means finding a new supplier. There's money involved. And so, but if you're not proactive, there really is a recall. It comes back to that whole reputational risk. Do you want to let it get to that? So we've kind of started a new approach where we're now talking with QA and procurement. So we've brought it now to the other side of the supply chain. Before the product gets into the supply chain, as you're doing potentially a request for a quote or a proposal, or your tender for the business, let's say it's private label, and you're going to different suppliers to bid on the business for spices, for example. I know, because, I ran private label for many years. You get samples in, they're not being tested. It's organoleptic, right? They're tasting, cupping, if it's coffee, there's, texture, but nobody's testing for authenticity. If you did that at that stage, so for QA, the product hasn't gotten into the supply chain yet. If you're uncovering something, you're uncovering it before it's a crisis. For procurement, you're now able to see if you're comparing apples to apples. If you're getting competing bids in and somebody's got a lower price and everything else seems to be the same, you're tasting, it feels great, the texture is great, it smells great, whatever, but it could be diluted and you don't know. This is This has been a bit of a game changer. And I hate that term because it's overused. It is one of those, like, why didn't we think of this before? But it is, again, back to my experience and the work that we've been doing. It takes away the risk.
Yeah.
And just moves it completely away from now we have to worry about doing a recall or pulling product off the shelf and having operational issues. This is right at the beginning. And it's making sure you're comparing apples to apples, that there's ingredient equivalency right up front. And so it's a business optimization tool for the buyers, for the procurement team. And it's a way for QA to be able to address the situation well in advance of it becoming a problem.
And definitely when you are speaking the love language of QA, risk-based approach, right? Because they really don't want to be pulled Friday at 5 p.m. or 5:01.
These things happen,
and a call on the cell phone that you need to come to work.
Yeah.
And they've done that.
So it's a bit of a different thing. We're called a Procurement Assurance Program.
Okay.
And it's given us the opportunity to talk to people, even and the team as well, to start looking at what we do a little differently.
Yeah.
Because the adulteration aside, it's opened the door now to doing things with companies that we wouldn't have worked with in the past. So we're talking to a bakery, for example. And again, there's not a lot of fraud in bakery, but they want to make sure that there's equivalency. If they're using more than one supplier for an ingredient.
Yeah, think about the whole spice, all the different spices. Yeah.
There's so many things. But even in how let's say yeast, in how it performs.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right. So you need to make sure, they want to make sure that there's equivalency between the products. If they're using more than one supplier, because it could have an effect on the output of the finished product, right? So it's something that's been outside of our wheelhouse, but very much related to what we do. And so it's opened up, another area for us to explore. And so we're doing some pilots with a few companies, and they're pilots as much for us as they are for them, because it's a different type of C of A if you're not doing something for a regulatory compliance. It's more for their internal work. So there's a whole bunch of things we're exploring, but again, it's all within that realm of authenticity, and there's so much more that we could be doing, and that's what we're exploring now.
Oh, wow.
But
maybe one more thing. Because when we arrived, you shared some exciting news with us as well. That just happened, hot off the press. If you're open to sharing that.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know when this is going to air, but 2 days ago of the day of this recording, we got our 17025 ISO 17025 accreditation. Very excited. It's a lot of hard work for anybody who knows what it is to be ISO accredited. And it's funny because it's something, we are almost 6 years old, and it wasn't on our radar screen originally. You don't need to be ISO accredited to have a lab and to be doing the type of work that we're doing. But we felt that, our science was already very rigorous. We're very proud of the work we're doing here, proud of the team and, the methods we've developed. And we knew that we had a very, as I said, disciplined, rigorous program, but to have it now validated, third-party validated. And we went with a very large accreditor in the US, the largest, ANSI National Accreditation Board, ANAB. And so we just got it 2 days ago. We got the certificate. We had the audit back in August, and the team is so excited to get it right away on your first try. This was really a big achievement, and everybody pulled, because it's not, we hired someone to help us with the process last year, but it's not a one person. Everybody on the team, including management, we all had a role to play in this to make sure that we had all of our ducks in a row. So the team is very proud. There's actually some of them baked some stuff today to celebrate. So,
well, congratulations. That's huge. Super excited for you guys and the additional impact that you'll be making. And this is just the beginning. What are some of the best ways that companies can get a hold of you? I'm sure this will spark a lot of interest.
Best thing to do is through our website.
Okay.
We invite people to go visit our website. By the time this comes out, we have a new website. We've completely relaunched our website and made it far easier to understand. I don't want to say dumbed it down, but we've had people tell us they've been on our website, but still don't quite understand what you do. So we've made it very simple. The landing page says that we verify that what's on the label is in the product.
Oh, that's a clear message.
That's great.
It's the message your mother understands. That's what we're using, right? We just the science is there if you need it, but we needed to make it very clear. That's what we do. So we invite people. You can go on our website. There's an info at, you can just go in and send us a note, and that's the best way to reach us.
Perfect.
We'll put that on the show notes.
Yeah. Well, we have a tradition on this podcast, and it's sharing a previous question from another guest that we'd like to pass on to you. They don't know that you're our guest, so this is quite fun, Lara. Do you have this question for us?
Our previous guest was Harbinder Mann from the Almond Board of California.
The almond, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so her question is, how has AI changed how you do your job, either from an operational perspective or a creative perspective?
So I'm going to answer that in two ways. First of all, we are just starting to get into AI for the work we're doing here. So professionally, so it's premature for me to talk about that at this point. We're working with somebody who's starting to explore what we can do with AI that's going to make, I think, take away a lot of some of the grunt work that the team is doing today. So there's, a lot of possibility there. From a less technical perspective, I think AI, ChatGPT, whatever anybody's using today, has really been, I think, eye-opening for all of us at how it has simplified and made us more efficient in our work, even just in the collateral that we're putting together, in being able to, even the website, just the amount of that it has taken off of people's plates has been really very impressive. But we're just barely scraping the surface.
Oh yeah.
The more important AI is the work that, will come from what we're doing now, the exploratory work. You heard, Arun talk about machine learning. So there's some work there that we're doing, but we're exploring going much deeper than we are today.
Gosh, exciting stuff.
I know it is exciting.
It's so exciting.
It's incredible how fast.
It's going by. Yeah.
So quickly. The tradition continues.
Yeah.
You need to provide a question for our next guest without knowing who it is.
Well, it's going to be, again, this is going to be interesting. So again, not sure, but if they're either consumer packaged goods or if they're retailers or brand owners, I would say, what are you doing to increase consumer confidence in the next 5 years? What would you do?
That's a great question.
Well, I know how I'd answer that.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much
for having us and sharing, all the exciting work you and the team are doing to bring more confidence to the food and supplement.
Well, thank you for having me. Honestly, I know people always say that, but I'm very happy you reached out. Again, we have a great message we want to take out to the world, so we're happy to do so. Any opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.